I'm here today to talk to you about global trends. We've been already talking a little bit about global trends. So I'm going to try not to throw a lot of numbers at you, but we're going to try together to define where the potential lies. Where should we invest in the future? We're living in a world of uncertainty. We've been talking about it. We hear it all the time. This is a changing world. In fact, a couple of days ago, I was on the phone with US colleagues, and the discussion was around, when is the big crisis coming? We want to know. We want to get prepared. When is it going to happen? And my answer, we're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of it, but we don't really experience it. We don't really feel it the way we felt it before. I don't have you won't see any slides. So if you basically look at the GDP in 2019 and you compare to 2018, you will see that all the regions are down, significantly down compared to 2018. The difference, I think, is this is what I call a silent crisis. It's very difficult to define the root cause. It's very difficult to find a quick fix for it. And usually, if you ask me, these are the crises that last a little longer. So if we look at real estate investment volumes, 9% down. That's a massive downturn right there compared to 2018. And if you check and look at the breakdown per asset class, I think I will leave you a few seconds to look at this slide. It's quite interesting. Everything is pretty much flat or going down slightly. There's one exception. It's the industrial sector. In fact, I should call it the logistics sector. For the first time in 2019, there's as much volume invested in logistics as there is in retail. That tells you something. And the next slide is actually mind-blowing, if you ask me. For the first time ever, European markets command similar yields for logistics space as they do for retail space. In fact, if you look at the lines, they're crossing each other. You see where I'm trying to go with this? Let's look at the local picture. Let's look at the regional picture. But before that, let's look at rental levels. Logistics commands the only global rent increase. Every region, you can see 3%, 2%, 9% in Asia Pacific rental increase. And the vacancies are all in a blended manner about 5%. That's exceptional. Let's drill down and look at the regional picture here. And the trend is pretty much the same. Investment volumes are down. And we're not talking here about investment volumes in this region. We're talking about capital outflow. So the GCC investors have been extremely active outside of the region, but as you can see, the trend is the same. The volumes are going down. And it's more at a sovereign level, I would say, because at a private capital level, it's still at a very healthy level. And if you check the breakdown per asset class, you can see that even in industrial, in logistics, it's pretty flat in 2019. But if you compare it to the retail volumes being invested outside of the region, on the right-hand side, it's probably about half. It's actually less than half than logistics. So that tells you something again. I will end my part with this. If you ask me my humble opinion, I don't think we are so much anymore in a changing world. I actually think that all of us are witnesses of a completely new world. We don't always realize it. We are living in a totally new world. And in fact, I think the common theme for this new world is experience. I'm pretty convinced that in 10 years' time, you will only go to a retail store for the experience. And everything that is not experience, you'll buy it online. And in the UAE, with its central geographical location, I think offers a tremendous opportunity for us to be one of the leading e-commerce hub in the world. So I really hope that the leadership of this country includes this as part of their vision. That's it for my part. I'm going to pass the baton now to Craig Plumb, who will be talking about redefining retail warehousing and how it's applicable here in Dubai. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very well aware that this is the last presentation before your lunch break, so I'll try and keep the energy up, and hopefully you'll keep with me for about 10 to 15 minutes before we break for lunch. For those of you who are Cityscape veterans, you will know that JLL tries to talk about a new sector of the market each year at Cityscape, and this is the fourth year of this trend. In previous years, we've talked about affordable housing, we've talked about education, we've talked about healthcare. This year, we want to talk about what we think will be an emerging asset class, and that is retail logistics. We had a bit of fun trying to think of a name for this new asset class. Well, first of all, it's not really new. Obviously, we've had retail space and we've had warehousing for a long time. But the main point, if you have to take one point away from our presentation today, it's that there is an increasing overlap or convergence between retail and logistics. So we're trying to talk about the coalition of retail space and logistics space. So we tried to come up with a word that combined retail and logistics. And we had a few quite interesting suggestions for that. We thought of maybe retailistics, or we thought of lodge-tail. But in the end of the day, we thought they all sound a bit corny, so we just came up with retail logistics. So if anyone's got a better term, how they could combine retail and logistics into one word, let me know. But for the moment, we'll just go with redefining retail logistics. So where do we start? Let's start with some global trends. And retailing is being disruptive, as we all know. There's massive change going on in the retail market, and this is where we think the story should start. These are the four big drivers of change in the retail market as we see it today. We've got competition, which you can talk about supply. We've got technology. We all know about the growth of e-commerce. We've got consumer expectations, as Thierry just mentioned. It's all becoming around experience, and nowhere is that more true than in the retail sector. And then we've got the global economic environment, which obviously we can't forget. So those 4 sets of drivers are disrupting the global retail industry big time. Just a couple of stats. I'm a research guy, so I always like to put a few stats in. But some of you would have seen this week in the press record numbers of store closures in the US. 7,000 retail stores have closed in the US over the last 6 months. That's a record number of store closures. JLL estimate that up to 25% of all the retail space in the UK could become redundant by 2025. So we're seeing big change in the retail sector at the global level. So this is not just a UAE issue, this is a global issue, and it's being driven by these 4 trends. But what does that mean for the real estate markets? It means that the role of the store is changing. Retail is always a very dynamic sector, so the role of the store has never been static. It's always been changing anyway, but it's probably changing at a faster pace than it ever has done in the past. And basically what we've done, we've gone from the old traditional bricks and mortar shops where everything used to be stored in a warehouse, shipped to the shop, the customers used to come to the shop and buy it and take it home. We're now in what they're calling an omni-channel supply chain. Omni-channel, multi-channel, call it what you like. But for success in retail these days, retailers obviously have to have different delivery mechanisms, different supply chain mechanisms. And that's really what we're talking about, whether it's using delivery vans or couriers or drones or robots. It's all around getting the goods from the supplier to the customer in an efficient manner. One point of caution on here, omni-channel does not mean the death of the store. There will always be a role for physical retail stores. And Dubai's obviously got quite a few of them, so that's good news. But what it will mean is that the role of the store will change. And this is just an example of how some of that might look. But we're going to see different things introduced within the stores. They're not going to be the same as they used to be. We're going to see click and collect. We're going to see technology introduced in the stores. You're going to be able to try on the products, to try on the makeup, whatever it is, in the store in a much more interactive fashion than you had in the past. And of course, you're going to see apps. That's not new, but these are just some of the examples of global retailers that are adapting to the change. They're not moving totally away from stores. They still need stores, but they probably need less stores, and they probably need smaller stores, and they certainly need a different type of store than what they have in the past. So this is some of the trends that we're seeing globally. Now, what does all that mean for Dubai? Dubai really is the most active logistics hub and the most active retail hub in the Middle East. So we've got very much a case here where retailing and logistics are both major parts of the Dubai economy. Just to start with the retail data first, this is the total amount of retail floor space in Dubai as at today, about 3.8 million square meters of mall-based retail. That figure is going to grow to about 5.3 million by the end of next year. So there's a lot of shopping malls in Dubai. The 10 largest malls are the ones that are marked on there. They're the super regionals. They've each got 90,000 square meters or more of retail floor space. So Dubai is a leading retail hub. I don't think anybody is going to have any qualms with that statement. Because of that, Dubai, as I said, has a lot of retail floor space per person. It's about 1.3 square meters of retail floor space for every person that lives in Dubai. And that's high by global standards. Now, this is a little bit of an unfair comparison because these figures only cover the floor space within malls. And if you actually to consider Dubai, there isn't much retail floor space outside of malls, where if you were to go to Helsinki or Chicago, there obviously is more high street retail floor space. But however you measure it, Dubai has a lot of retail floor space. And that's the sector that is being changed and is being challenged by some of the trends that we're talking about today. So that's the supply side. I mentioned at the beginning that there's also huge drivers of change from e-commerce, from technology. You'll all be familiar with this data, but basically what it's showing is that the e-commerce sector is still relatively small in Dubai compared to global standards, but is growing rapidly. This is actually the growth rate between 2018 and 19. You can see the overall retail sales grew at about 5% whereas e-commerce or internet shopping grew at 22%. E-commerce in Dubai is still only about 5% of total retail sales. And that's despite that we've obviously got Souk, we've got Noon, we've got Amazon, we've got a number of increasingly important platforms here. It's still only about 5% of all sales in the UAE are done through these e-commerce channels. But that's going to grow. If you look at the global data, it's already at about 14%. So 14% of all global retail sales at the moment are done online. In Dubai, it's only 5%. It's fairly obvious the way that the market is going to go. There's going to be growth of more e-commerce sales as we go forward. We probably already know some of that, but a little bit perhaps more surprising is obviously the role of Dubai as a logistics hub. One of the things I think we'll probably be saying today is that as it was with schools, as it was with affordable housing, as it has been with healthcare, logistics has been a bit of a represented sector from a retail industry in the past. So there is a lot of logistics space in Dubai, but a lot of it is old, a lot of it is not high quality, and there's a lot of opportunities for more. Unfortunately, nobody has accurate data on exactly how much logistics space there is. What we can measure is how much land there is allocated to industrial, and that's what's on here, 147 million square meters. And if you were just to assume a site density of 25%, that would give you about 35 million square meters of logistics space, which is a big number. It's almost 10 times the amount of retail floor space. So there's a lot of logistics space. The issue is it's not all of the right quality. Obviously, in the past, and this is increasingly breaking down now, we've got the free zones versus the onshore. This is obviously the free zones in the purple, the onshore in the red. Interesting, one of the dynamics of this market is that is now changing, and that you can now incorporate onshore and free zone activities from the same physical location. And I think that's one of the drivers of the opening up of the logistics market going forward. So there's a lot of industrial space in Dubai. The good thing about Dubai is it has a fantastic road network. This slide just shows the drive times, and these are actually truck drive times, not car drive times. But you can drive a truck from the port at Jebel Ali to pretty much anywhere in Dubai in less than an hour. So what that means is that there's less need for last mile logistics, less need for urban logistics. There will still be some need for that, and we're seeing a growth of urban logistics. We're seeing a growth of last mile delivery. But for many operators, for many retailers, they'll be able to service the whole city from one location within 1 hour's drive time. And I think that would be a very different story if we were doing this presentation today in, let's say, Egypt or in Saudi Arabia, where you'd have a very different pattern there. You would need multiple distribution centers. But Dubai can be serviced from one large logistics hub with smaller satellite requirements. So we've got logistics as an important sector of the market. There's a lot of it, but it's not all high quality. And the other issue is there's a lack of private sector participation. The sector has been very government-dominated over the years, largely through the agencies such as TCOM or JAFSA. And there hasn't been that much investment by the private sector in the real estate market, the logistics real estate market. But that is changing. We're now seeing that those government regulations opening up. The authorities are becoming more amenable to private sector investment. And some of the investment that we talked about earlier as coming into the region from overseas, we think will come into this sector of the market. So there will be more private sector participation in the industrial market going forward. And that'll be a good thing, because at the moment, many of the major retail chains would like to have distribution facilities built for them. They don't all want to own. Many of you will be familiar with the Landmark Group's new facility in Dubai South. Landmark are one of the few retailers that prefer to own their assets. They always have a strategy of ownership, but for many of the other retailers, they would much prefer to have their facilities built for them. And the only reason they're going down the build-to-suit route is because there's no suitable facilities being developed that match their standards. So for the developers in the room, for the investors in the room, if you could provide a quality of facility, there is a definite demand from the retailers to take that facility. It's just not there in the market at the moment. So that's why we think the future is about this retail logistics. It's the merging together of these two sectors. And I'll just draw this to a close now as to how these sectors might start to come together. These are some of the trends we're seeing. I won't go through all those in detail. There is a report that we're releasing as part of this conference today that you'll pick up more detail about this. But these are just some of the changes that are needed to be made to allow the logistics sector in Dubai to flourish in a way that it isn't doing at the moment. But what does that mean for real estate? It means for real estate players, whether you're an occupier or an investor or a developer, if you're looking for retail space, these are some of the trends that you need to be looking out for. Now, there's no magic formula on here, but what I think the key trends here are phrases like flexibility, adaptability. The nature of your retail space has to change. There's going to be a continued role for the mall, continued role for physical retail space, but you're going to have to be very adaptive as to how you change that going forward. And again, we'll look at some of the trends for that in the report, which I'll show you in a minute. Similarly with industrial, the issues here are largely around quality and scalability. So many of the distribution companies, many of the retailers are looking to be able to scale their operations upwards and downwards very quickly. But the facilities they can get, the logistics facilities that are available at the moment, don't allow them to do that in a seamless fashion. So this coming together of retail and logistics has implications for you as whether you're a developer, whether you're an investor, or whether you're an occupier. What those opportunities are will vary according to which sector of the market you're in, but we think Dubai sits somewhere on here between the less mature and the semi-mature. So just from a global perspective, these are some of the types of development that we might see. These won't all be seen in Dubai, but these are some of the things that there'll be opportunities for in the Dubai market going forward. Okay, so final graphic. What we're seeing, in our view, is a merging of the retail market and the logistics market. The retail space that gets delivered to the market will have to change as a result of that. We'll need more higher quality logistics space. But what we're seeing is those two sectors merging together into something that we're calling retail logistics. For those, I hope that's been a good little 10-minute intro to what obviously there's a lot more detail on. Two things I would point your attention to. Firstly, at the global level, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, JLL are looking at this as a global issue, not just a local issue. And for those of you who are involved in the retail market, many of you will probably be going to MAPIC in Cannes in November. We will be releasing a global report looking at the same trends at the global level at MAPIC. So book your tickets now for that. It's at the end of November. But for the local, it's interesting here, Dubai often positions itself as a global leader. JLL is very proud to be doing that as well, so we've released our local report here before the global report. So from tomorrow, this report, Redefining Retail Logistics, the Dubai Experience, will be available from those social media handles on there. So from, I think it's 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, this report will go live. So this will highlight some of the trends that I was talking about. We'll provide more details about that, and we'll give you some opportunities, identify some of the opportunities for investing in the retail logistics sector. So with that, I thank you and enjoy your lunch.